Miles Guo, the guy who founded the new federal state of China, gets arrested shortly after saying he'll come clean and name people inside the CIA and the FBI. Well, Christopher Wray, there's indications from your organization that he may be compromised. He was Miles Guo's lawyer early on, and then what happened with that?
Christopher Wray, he was a partner with a big law firm, King & Spalding. This is a big law firm, and they do a lot of business with the Communist China. Christopher spent 12 years working for King & Spalding before he was named as the FBI director in 2017. According to the law.com, there's an investigative reporting showing Christopher Wray received $14 million from King & Spalding since 2016. He was Mr. Miles Guo's lawyer before he was lured by the CCP. The CCP's vice chairman, Wang Qishan, has a global conglomerate called HNA, and this is the company that has been, purchasing a lot of international hotels, airlines, and properties, including Hilton and Park Avenue office building and Deutsche Bank. This is a really CCP's global expansion. So King & Spalding, where Christopher Wray was a partner, they accepted a multi-billion-dollar contract from the CCP kleptocrats Wang Qishan to represent HNA globally. And that's why he discontinued the service with Mr. Miles Guo.
When we spoke before, you described what you believed were Hunter Biden and the Biden family's effectively offenses against the United States in ways that their business practices had undermined U.S. national security. Okay. What was that?
So Sinohawk Holdings was a Delaware LLC, which was effectively a partnership between the Biden family, myself, Rob Walker and James Gillier, and a Chinese large company called CEFC, which turned out to effectively be the capitalistic arm of President Xi's One Belt, One Road.
Yes.
And so Sinohawk Holdings was the entity that Chairman Yi, who was the chairman of CEFC, and an entity called Hudson West 4 owned 50% of Sinohawk Holdings, and an entity that represented the Biden family, myself, James Gillier and Rob Walker, called Oneida Holdings, owned the other 50% of that entity. A lot of discussion has been about the $10 million the Chinese were supposed to fund into Sinohawk Holdings. $5 million of that was representing their 50%, and the $5 million, they would call it a loan to the Biden family, but effectively it was a loan to Oneida Holdings to represent the original operating capital. And that was just operating capital. That Sinohawk Holdings was set up to effectively deploy billions of dollars that CFC was claiming, and rightfully believable because they were doing it around the world, to invest via Sinohawk in infrastructure projects, technology companies, investment banks, financial institutions, both here in the U.S. and around the world.
So this is the limited liability company agreement of Sinohawk Holdings.
The claims made in the document are consistent with what we found and disclosed to you all in Romania. It suggests a pattern of bribery where payments would be made through shell accounts and multiple banks. And there's a term for that, it's called money laundering. And that, again, is what the majority of the suspicious activity reports also said. They confirmed there's an ongoing investigation using this information. I assume that ongoing investigation is in Delaware. I don't know that, but I assume that.
Can you ground why that's your assumption and what information you have to support that it's based in Delaware?
I assume it's Delaware. I'll put it like that.
Mr. Chair, could
yes.
you take notes today? Were you able to take notes in there?
I took notes on the unclassified portion, but then there was a classified portion I didn't take notes on.
If you want to have follow-up briefings from the FBI on this, again...
The ball's in the FBI's court. Thank you all.
Where is that informant today? Where are these whistleblowers?
Well, unfortunately, we can't track down the informant. We're hopeful that the informant is still there.
I know you got stuff going on. You're trying to find, the fake informant. that you've now has gone missing. I know you're busy with that.
Well, I got a message from him just a couple of days ago saying he was a kind of mild-mannered professor in Washington, D.C., working with the same Chinese business people that Hunter Biden and Jim Biden were working on during Joe Biden's vice presidency. And so he had a sort of ringside seat to that influence peddling operation. And what he says, and it's backed up by some documents, is that in March 2019, offered to be interviewed by the Department of Justice, and 4 FBI agents and 2 DOJ prosecutors from the Southern District of New York flew to Brussels and interviewed him over 2 days, 16 hours, and he told them basically back in 2019 what we discovered the next year with Hunter Biden's laptop, that this Chinese energy company had paid Hunter and Jim Biden millions of dollars, that the money was funneled through a Biden family friend, Rob Walker, and also that Hunter Biden had a mole in the FBI who tipped off the Chinese that they were under indictment.
Notes on the unclassified portion, but then there was a classified portion I didn't take notes
Did
of.
you want to have follow-up briefings from the FBI on this? Again,
The ball's in the FBI's court. Thank you all.
According to the law.com, there's an investigative reporting showing Christopher Wray received $14 million from King and Spalding since 2016. He was Mr. Moskow's lawyer before he was lured by the CCP. The CCP's vice chairman, Wang Qishan, has a global conglomerate called HNA, and this is the company that has been, purchasing a lot of international hotels, airlines, and properties, including Hilton and Park Avenue office building and Deutsche Bank. This is a really CCP's global expansion. So King and Spalding, where Christopher Wray was a partner, they accepted a multi-billion-dollar contract from the CCP kleptocrats.
The other thing that needs to be understood is that even though it's set up initially under the idea of some kind of military protocol and feeding intelligence back to the president, what happens is it's set up in a New York law firm that deals with international finance, Sullivan and Cromwell. This is the pipeline of international finance directly through, high finance, Wall Street, New York, becomes a weird piece of all of this military intelligence gathering. Suddenly it has a purpose which crisscrosses with the Wall Street interests and the international finance around this law firm there. And what happens is through that power of the government, and one of the things that happens in the background there is part of the CIA ledger in the background is that, they're given this mandate that no matter what they do, they can't be prosecuted. This is also completely extra-constitutional. It was never envisioned by the Founding Fathers.
Director William Burns has made a secret trip to China for the Biden administration. Now, this is the highest level contact between the two countries in quite some time. Let's get right to ABC's Chief Global Affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz. And Martha, what have you learned about Director Burns' trip?
David, a U.S. official confirming tonight that Director Burns traveled to Beijing in May and met with his counterparts there in an effort to keep lines of communication open between our two countries.